How do you bring a dog in your home, an animal, a canine, like you said, and not formally educate it? E-collars have revolutionized dog training.
Some people treat their dogs too much like a kid.
If it was easy, everybody would have a wall full of ribbons and well-trained dogs, right? It's just not the way that it is.
How does it make you feel when you spend so much time to train these dogs?
Yeah, it is disrespectful. This is what I was meant to do. No question. 100%.
My only experience with dogs and training dogs was my little Shih Tzu that we had when we were growing up. And the greatest training that we had for it was to stop yapping and to poop outside. That's really the only things we needed it to do. But when we saw Matt's dogs, hi Memphis, when we saw Matt's dogs last year and the year before trained to pick up birds and to hunt, it was incredible. And so I'm going to talk to Matt today about some of the things that he does to train dogs, some of the reasons he trains, and some of the misconceptions about training dogs as well.
Matthew Wilson, own Maritime dog training, professional dog trainer for all kinds of different things, obedience, retriever training, service and therapy dogs. I do behavior consultations as well. So a wide array of services really, but in the dog training realm.
My only experience really, other than like friends having dogs and stuff, was growing up with a Shih Tzu, which is just a terrible dog. Like, not to diss anybody that has those types of dogs or likes those smaller dogs, but she was yappy and annoying. And even when we were moving out of our house, like the basement was just full of shit because she just would go downstairs and she was poorly trained. So last season when we were out hunting, to see your dogs and how well trained they are was just incredible. To see how they could go retrieve a bird even like a kilometer away just at the behest of you saying go, and it'll do it.
Yeah.
And Nicole and I have been talking about the potential of getting a farm dog. And so what I want to know is, what are some of the better breeds, but dual purpose, because let's be honest, I want to hunt, but I also want a good protective breed for farming, but also hunting.
Yeah, well, it kind of comes down to your specific needs. I mean, there's lots of versatile breeds, really. Like, I mean, if you're looking for a dog that you can hunt and pick up birds with, I mean, it's pretty hard to beat a lab around the farm or around the house. It just sort of depends on that, what you need as far as protection or things around the farm. But you could teach them just about anything. Obviously, that's my preferred breed of dog, but there's lots. I mean, Australian Shepherds, things like that would be really good around the farm. As far as hunting goes, maybe not so much. It just depends also on kind of what you want to live with, too. You know, what your needs are. But for myself personally, when people ask, one of my top 3 breeds would be a lab, a golden retriever. German Shepherds are super intelligent too, very versatile over the years. So,
what's the biggest thing you have people coming to you for training?
Right now, to be honest, it's sort of a mix between obedience and behavior issues. There's a lot of dogs that are reactive or borderline aggressive. I just actually did a video on that as to what the reasoning for that is. You know, you have to look at genetics, you have to look at people's lifestyle, what that dog was actually bred for, and is the dog doing that, or is it just kind of melting away on the couch in the house, you know. So there's a lot of that nowadays, and there probably should be a lot more, but mostly obedience. I do a lot of service dog training now too. We're just starting to really scratch the surface on how good they are and how valuable they are in people's lives. And most of them are psychiatric. I mean, when we were kids, it was, you know, seeing eye dogs for the blind. You didn't see much on the psychiatric side, but yeah, I do a lot of that, and it's super rewarding for sure. So,
what are some of the misconceptions then with people bringing dogs to you that I think a lot of people feel that dogs are kind of cutesy, they're their little pet and their little baby and they want to take care of them, but at the end of the day, they're a canine, like they're an animal. So what are some of the misconceptions that people have with regards to how these animals are trained?
Oh man, I mean, we've completely forgotten that they're dogs. You know, I mean, dogs are going to do dog things, right? I mean, yes, we can treat them better than allowing them to just live in a doghouse outside. I mean, dogs are more of a part of the family, but what we've started to do is go the other way with their discipline. And I mean, everybody thrives off discipline. You know, life has consequences, and we've started to take those away from our dogs and their education. And there's a huge, just overall lack of education. Not in the sense that there's not information on how to do the job and train your dog, but we're just not educating our dogs, and we're expecting them to understand what our standards for their behavior is. So it's not a good deal. You know, we would never have a child and not educate them somehow. You know, we just can't really fathom that somehow. Whether you homeschool, whatever you do, we're going to educate our kids somehow. But we do that all the time with dogs, and it's so rampant now. You know, how do you bring a dog in your home, an animal, a canine, like you said, and not formally educate it? You know, it's just going to cause problems. And then a lot of times people are just overdogged. You know, they get a dog that historically has a job to do this, and their lifestyle is like the complete opposite, right? So, yeah, I could talk about that for a while, but that's a pretty good
No,
overview.
go ahead. It's fascinating to me too. I'm glad that you mentioned it, but I think that some people treat their dogs too much like a kid and too much like a toddler. Like they've got gentle parenting now, and they're trying to like, okay, come on, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But with a dog, is it true that they're still pack animals? Like they're going to have the alpha dog, and you need to be that for them.
Yeah, well, the way that they digest information is not like us. I mean, we connect verbally, right? You can tell through the tone of my voice, things like that, and the words that I'm actually saying, how I feel or towards you or about the situation that we're in. And with a dog, it's not that at all. You know, I mean, they are very, very still true to their nature. Yes, we've domesticated them, and you know, genetics have changed over the years, but they're still dogs. They still do dog things daily. I mean, my dogs are still dogs. Yes, are they well trained? Absolutely. When I ask them to do things, do they do it? Most of the time, but not all the time. You know why? Because they're dogs. And I'm aware of that, right? But we have definitely got away from sort of a balanced approach. Like at one point it was no correction is praise, right? Like no news is good news. If you don't get smocked, you must be doing something right. And now we're all the way on the other side where it's just purely positive, and there's no physical consequence to anything ever. And you know, it's causing a lot of problems, because regardless of what you believe, there will be pressure involved. If you attach a leash to a dog, there is going to be pressure involved. And if we don't teach our dog how to avoid that, we do them a disservice. You know, can you train a dog without the use of pressure from a leash and just using treats? Yeah, you can do it. You can get to the finish line. But are you going to be left hanging when you need to make a correction at some point and your dog is actively being a dog? Yes. And if you make a physical correction and you haven't taught that formally to your dog, is that fair? No, because your dog doesn't know how to avoid that. So if you start somewhere in the middle with a balanced approach, we're not all the way this way, we're not all the way this way, and then we say, okay, this is where our dog kind of lands on the spectrum. It's a little bit softer, or it's a little more assertive. Then we can lean, ebb and flow whichever way we need to with the program. But in my opinion, this way or this way solely is not great. You know, it just leaves you hanging as a handler, you know.
What are some of the tools then you use? I mean, you mentioned using a leash and physically correcting them. And I saw you had posted recently about how different types of leashes or different types of collars. And I think you got chewed out in those comments about some of the tools that you use.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, not everybody's going to agree, and that's okay. You know, I use what works, and I don't overdo it with my dogs. My main focus is always on teaching. But again, like if I hook my dog up to a harness, which not all that long ago, if you had a harness on a dog, it was because the dog was going to pull a sled for you, or it was around the farm or whatever, like it was there for a reason. And now we're so nervous about, you know, people having something to say if we have a slip lead on a dog, that everybody uses those. But what that does is it allows the dog to use its whole body weight with zero correction to actively pull you down the road, right? And when it wants to go see something, I mean, it's going to go, right? And they're super powerful. You know, a 60, 70 pound dog is way stronger than most grown men, and it's unreal.
Especially when they're determined.
Especially when they're determined. And again, I'm going to reiterate lots. Being a dog, doing what dogs do, they're animals. So I like to use anything like a slip lead, a chain, or a prong collar. I believe in e-collars too. Those aren't tools of cruel and unusual punishment. They're there for a reason, and if you know how to use them and you educate your dog on that type of stimulation, everybody wins. I mean, if I go from using harness to a prong collar, and that provides less overall pressure on me and my dog, if the dog says, okay, I don't like that stimulation, I'm not going to pull on that. Okay, well then there's less pressure overall, whether it's from a harness or whether it's on you. That's what we want. Isn't that the end goal? Does it cause lasting physical effects on your dog? Psychological? Absolutely not. I mean, you could hurt your dog with anything. As soon as you clasp that leash on there and let go, you could hurt your dog. Okay, so it's more about being educated on the tools, using what works and what's going to provide the least amount of pressure possible. So I completely agree with all of those things, anything that kind of makes its own correction when there's pressure. And then when you're ready to take your dog off leash, which everybody wants, that's when you start to introduce the e-collar. And I mean, hundreds of yards away, I can make a timely correction on my dog, the same as I would with a leash, because that's all it is. And it teaches my dog that much better, right? My dog understands that much more, you know. E-collars have revolutionized dog training. All you'd have to do is just look back in history of how things have gone. I mean, the level of competition in what I do now is just, I don't know if they could throw a bird that a dog couldn't find. You know, it's unreal. Yes, some of that's definitely genetics and there's a lot in training and things like that, but, you know, making timely corrections on your dog is what's super important. I can't, and I mean, I've trained a dog without an e-collar. She's a 2-time Grandmaster hunter. She's a special animal, but it doesn't mean we didn't have fights. You know, when she was hundreds of yards out in the field and made the wrong decision, all I had was my voice. She doesn't speak English, right? Hey, you did that wrong doesn't mean much to her, right? So if I would have to walk out and put her back to where she was supposed to be, that's not only time out of my lesson, but it's time that she doesn't understand. She can't comprehend that. Me walking, by the time I would get out there, she'd be like, hey, what are you doing out here? This doesn't make sense to me. Whereas I can blow the whistle, tweet, nick, no different than a little pull on the leash. My dog understands because I've taught it in the yard, and away we go. And what it does also for a regular pet owner is it just provides you a wireless leash. Like otherwise, as soon as you unclip that leash, your whole program's a house of cards. Like you have zero mode of reinforcement except your voice. And again, you know, at the end of the day, if your dog wants to be a dog and go chase that skunk or go chase that porcupine or eat something, and you know, you've got no method of reinforcement whatsoever. You know, it's like driving a vehicle for years and then saying, you know what, I've never had an accident, so I'm just not ever going to wear my seatbelt or not have that as an option in the vehicle, right? You know, so they work, yeah.
And it's really impressive to see when people can have their dogs off leash. Like when you have a really well-trained dog that knows how to heel, that will stay by your side,
Yeah.
but it takes a while to get to that point. Do you find that different breeds take a different amount of time, or is it all just up to the individual dog?
Oh, there's a lot of variables there. Definitely depends on breeding, what their temperament is. I mean, you take a dog like Tank, who's a hard driver, and so is Memphis, really. Another hard driver, but Otter was super chill, super mild-mannered, you know. Wasn't one to really push the limits all that much like those two are, you know. So it depends on that. Depends a lot on the handler, for sure, yeah, absolutely.
So for handler, does it really depend on the demeanor or how they treat their dog? Or because I think some people can have sort of a passive approach,
Yeah.
And can almost, I mean, people would know that or feel that dogs especially can smell the fear. And I think that some people would have that misconception that it's just like, hey, I'm scared of this big dog. Maybe it's a woman who their husband got this dog for hunting or for the farm,
Right.
and they're scared of it, so they can't really have it off leash or can't train it.
Yeah, what that comes down to really, like, I always want to operate at a pretty even level. You know what I mean? And so what that comes down to, if I want that level of, I guess you could say, compliance out of my dog, it comes down to teaching. Like, you can't do your job half the way and then correct for the rest. Like, I have to make sure that my dog understands the task at hand. So if I'm asking you to sit and you're 6 inches away, rather than me raise my voice and say it again, I'm just going to follow through and make them do it, so that they go, oh, it's not that if I don't do it, I'm going to get a knuckle sandwich. He's going to make me do it, so I might as well do it. Because in that instance, our brain says, okay, I've said it once, the dog didn't do it, so I'll say it again, but louder this time. When it wasn't that the dog didn't hear you, they just chose not to do it, right? So why would we do that? But that's our mentality. That's our way of thinking. That's not how a dog thinks. And we should constantly remind ourselves, like, how does this dog think? What does this dog see? Why would it do that? You know, rather than thinking, well, I'll communicate with my voice about everything and talk in full sentences. It doesn't work, right? So, yeah, I mean, handlers vary. I mean, you know, you and I could take a pen and write the same word on a piece of paper and it would be different, right? No matter how hard we tried to get it the same. But it comes down to timing, standards for their behavior, training. You know, if you took one of my dogs and you've never trained and weren't much of a handler, of course you're a musician. It's like playing guitar. I wouldn't be able to play your guitar, but you could. You've done it lots. But wouldn't matter how much I read or did. Time playing that guitar is what's going to make me better. Dog training and being a good handler is like a trade. You know, you can do all the school you want. Time at the top of the leash is what matters at the end of the day.
And how early should you get your dog into training? Like, is it immediate? Like, as a puppy, you want to get them started? And is there a point where it's too late? Like, if your dog is 3-4 years old, has behavior problems, and is it just that much harder to then train an older dog?
Well, I always try to make examples for things. So when you talk about a behavior that's ingrained, think about it like building a wall out of bricks. And you have one brick that you put on there one day, and maybe you slip on the scaffold and it kind of goes on this way, and you say, oh, that's not bad, I'll just leave it like that. Well, then you get the wall up 2 or 3 more flights and you go, I really should have fixed that. Can you fix it? Yes, you can, but you're going to have to take all that other wall down to get there, right? So you can get there, but it just depends on your level of commitment. And most times, you know, if you've let a dog go for a long time and haven't put the effort in, my thought is, if you left the dog with me, could I get it done? Yes, probably. You know, couldn't guarantee, but we could probably modify pretty good. But are you willing to make the commitment now? Because why weren't you then? You know, now that there's a problem, you're ready to make the commitment. But can you really? Will you do it? So it's always best to start when they're like 10 weeks old. You get your dog at 8 weeks, hey, you know, you're just probably doing a little bit with it then as soon as you get it home. But 10 weeks, I definitely start formally. They're learning every day, right? Their brain is a sponge. A big part of our job, or 50%, is to just intervene in their daily activities. This is what's okay. This is what's not okay. Show them the laws, right? Their boundaries, you know. So, yeah, it's unbelievable what a dog can learn in the first 6 months. And when people wait, and they're like, oh, it's, you know, he's still young, it's only 6 months. Yeah, well, there's a lot of teaching that can happen, you know, in that short period of time. So you're always best to start early. If you're getting a dog, that should just definitely be part of things, right? You know, again, like educating your child. Like when you have a child, you're probably going to educate them somehow. You know, it's just part of your plan, right? For their overall benefit.
Well, and you don't get it. I find some people, I guess, would get a dog that is going to be a pet and going to be cute around the house. And maybe that's why we have some of those relatively useless breeds, like your little Chihuahuas, and you have the tiny dogs that are just,
breeds,
but I think most people, especially people in farming or in hunting, they're going to want a dog that's going to work. That's either going to protect their farm, like maybe it's a big loaf that's just, hey, you see a raccoon, it's going to chase it off. Or you want a dog that's going to work. You want a dog that's going to run after birds, that's going to point birds. And so I think that a lot of people want it trained, and some people may not even know how. So what are some of the things that people can get started at home doing by themselves? Because of course they could bring their dog to a trainer like yourself, and I think people can drop off their dogs and you train them.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, they can do that too. Yeah, that's an option.
But I think that a lot of people, whether it's cost prohibitive or they just want to be able to do it themselves, what are some things that people should be starting at that 10-week age of trying to teach their dog?
First of all, I mean, the big thing is to be proactive, to know what breed you're getting and why you're getting it, you know, if you're going to get a specific purebred breed. If not, and you're going to get a mixed breed, well, then you still should research, okay, this dog has got this, and this in it. Like, does this fit our lifestyle? And then I would try to educate. I mean, there's so much literature out there now, books and videos and YouTube and stuff like that. Whatever you do, though, once you pick a program, if somebody's got a full program, like, watch it over before you get your dog. If it aligns with, you know, a method that you're comfortable with, because that's a big thing, you have to buy in too, right? Then stick with it, because there's so much stuff out there, and you go, okay, well, I tried this and it didn't really work, so I'll try this person's program. Well, dog training is not fluid. Like, it's more like this, you know. That's, you know, every week there's somebody in the garage crying, you know. It just is what it is, out of frustration, right? Not because I make them cry, but they're frustrated, and I get it, right? You know, I've had a couple bad days here, things aren't going well. Yes, I understand. If it was easy, everybody would have a wall full of ribbons and well-trained dogs, right? It's just not the way that it is. It's hard. It's an animal, right, that you're trying to communicate. There's a lot of variables. So at home, educating yourself before you get the dog on some of the methods, and then right off the bat, there's so many things that you could do to teach your dog about, you know, how to properly come in and out of a door, to sit and wait for their food. All of these things that start to instill some boundaries for the dog's behavior are great. You know, there's so many, and everybody's house is their own house. Everybody has their own set of rules, and that's okay. But whatever they are, they have to be, right? So
I think consistency there is key too, because if it's like, oh, at some type, mom says you can be on the couch, but dad says you can't, so you can really confuse like you could confuse a kid. You can confuse a dog with inconsistent rules.
100%, yeah. Your general basic rules around the house, your standards for their behavior, have to always be the same. Like, what's okay should always be. What's not should never be. Then it's clear for the dog, because they don't know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, when dad's here, that you can't be on the couch, but Thursday you're allowed, right? So one person's correcting them, and then the other person is like, hey, get up here, you know. So we always want to be fair to the dog, you know, and having standards like that and having them flat out, you know. Then if something should happen, like the dog's never been allowed on the couch, and you find the dog on the couch and you want to make a correction, or you tell them no, off, they know why. They're like, oh, half of your job's already done, right? The dog knows, oh yeah, that's right, I'm not supposed to be up there, right? Like, you know, but you don't want to create any confusion, and we're really, really good at doing that. So good, yeah, because we're not consistent, right? You don't have to have 100 different commands for your dog. Your dog doesn't have to be able to read chapters out of a book. They just literally need to know the few basic commands, 5 or 6 commands, and then they have to know the rules and standards around the house. That's it. You know, if we can be consistent with those things and make obedience a way of life, right? Like, once, if you came to me for lessons, you did 5 lessons, like, that's not the end. It's forever, you know, if we're going to hold our dogs to a high standard. Because if we take ownership for their behavior, we would always train. If we said everything that dog does is my fault, and I'm embarrassed by that behavior, we would always train. And we would always hold ourselves accountable to condition those things, right? Like, should Tank know basic obedience? Yes. But I can't sit here, even though he's 5 years old and a master hunter, and say, well, he should know that. Okay, maybe he should, but have I conditioned it this week? Like, can I say that I've worked on formal obedience even for 10 minutes, 3 days a week with him, so that it's fresh in his mind what my standard is? And if the answer is no, then whose fault is that? It's definitely mine, right? Like, should I know grade 5 math? I probably should. Haven't done it in a day or two. You know, it's elementary, right? Those are elementary skills to a working dog like that, but they're important. They're the foundation for everything else I'm going to do with him, right? Or her, so.
So is there such thing as a dog whisperer then, or is it something that a trainer is always working with their dogs? I think you can look online and you can have these guys that claim that any dog that they can take care of and they can make sure that it goes from a nightmare to the best dog ever. Or is it something that you have to work at day in, day out, regardless of the breed, regardless of the trainer, you've got to work at it?
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, I might train 150 dogs a year. Like, I have a lot of experience and opportunity and time standing over top of a dog, right? And working with them. And not just teaching obedience, like doing work, like putting dogs in critical situations where with really complex concepts that they have to really use a lot of brain power to navigate their way through, right? That's not just teaching a dog to sit. So there's a lot of factors there that you have to learn about a dog's behavior and how to make that clear for them to be able to see that and navigate it and teach the process all the way to get there, right? So yeah, like, is there dog whispers? I mean, that's a popular handle, but I definitely feel like there's better handlers than others, right? Some people are better handlers than others, just naturally, they just have a sort of a better energy about them, you know what I mean? And when you think about a dog's senses, like, they can't talk, right? So how do they communicate with one another? It's not verbally, generally. So I always say, like, your energy travels down the leash to the dog. What you feel travels down the leash. They really can pick up on that better than we can. And we align with those things. We talk about, that person gave me bad vibes, or my intuition, or this, this or that. Like, we believe in those things, but for dogs, it's that much more heightened, right? So, yeah, I mean, you can be somebody that's taught, and you can learn this and be good at it and be successful. But there's definitely some people, like when you talk about that, I don't know the guy's name, but the horse whisperer there, like that's a legit thing. He was an interesting person, and he was referenced in a lot of literature. So yeah, I believe in that stuff.
And I think it comes down to understanding of the animal as well. And I think with some of the stuff that you do with regards to training, like, we forget how dog senses or animal senses are different from ours. Like, their sense of smell is impeccable. Their sense of sight is much different from ours. And so what is the process then for some of those training pieces of, okay, you're using this dog as a care dog that's going to be taking care of somebody. What is the process needed? Because it would be much different than a hunting dog, or I would presume.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you think about a service animal that teaches, or not that teaches, but identifies people's anxieties or their sugars at times, it's a fairly complex process. You have to match that dog with the person. They have to want to do that job, and they have to have the capability to be able to work with you. So there's a lot of obedience things that we start to work with that dog on, because that's got to be so super solid. Like, when I'm trying to communicate with you that I need you over here and up near this person's face so you can smell their breath, and you can identify when their sugar is high, sugar is low, things like that. You need a dog that's really willing to work with you. And it doesn't have to be a purebred dog at all. It just has to be a dog that's trainable, intelligent enough, and has enough perseverance to be able to navigate their way through public and different sort of situations. Like, they're still a really rugged working dog. They're put in a lot of different situations. It can be very stressful for them sometimes, because that's their job, to be out looking after this person. And I'll tell you right now, I haven't met a service dog yet that didn't wear that badge with pride. That's what they want. They are literally the definition of unconditional love. I mean, that work for me, that service and therapy dog work, like, therapy dogs serve other people, and I've definitely seen that with my mother and father's dog, changed a lot of people's lives. But the service dog side of things, like, people come to you, severe anxiety, can't even look you in the face, don't leave their house, don't have any lust for life whatsoever. And then you work with this dog and you teach them how to do deep pressure on that person when they're, completely overwhelmed with anxiety or light pressure or whatever. Lead them out of a store if need be, if they're going to have a panic attack. And all of a sudden, it's like they have a force field around them. They're able to go into the grocery store, and I'm like, how is this even a thing? Like, weeks ago, months ago, you couldn't even look up to speak to me. But here we are in a store together, you and your dog, you're smiling, leaving the house. So it's pretty rewarding.
I think there's been a number of embarrassing events over the last number of years of people who are buying a vest online and throwing it on any old animal or any old dog and calling it a service animal or an anxiety whatever.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel when you spend so much time to train these dogs to do a certain job, and then somebody is going to, well, I'll say what it is, disrespect what you do or what those dogs can do by just buying a cheap vest online?
Yeah, it is disrespectful. I mean, that's an excellent way to label that. I mean, I wish we had more legislation. Certain provinces do. I know BC does, Nova Scotia. I know there's more there, but I wish it was a blanket clear across, because none of my clients fear that whatsoever. But it does make it hard, especially when you're in a store working with your dog who's under control, and then somebody else, which has happened, comes in with a dog that's out of control, that they just want to kind of bring into the facility, and for sure that they're not working with it. It's hard. It's frustrating. And, all of my clients are advocates for other service dog people. They're polite when people ask them questions. They go through a lot. The whole premise is people know that they're not supposed to touch them. But why is that, right? Because you're going to distract the dog. So talking to the dog or looking at the dog, any of that, even though you love dogs, most people do, could distract the dog from its handler. Even, most of the time they might be in training, even a trained dog, right? So, and that dog is supposed to be there to work for them. So, yeah, the fake service dogs, it's a real bad deal. It's upsetting. Could say lots more about it, but anybody that's doing that should definitely be ashamed of themselves. There's a right and a wrong way to do things. That's not it,
And then just in the eye of the public, it just makes it hard for people who are struggling and do genuinely need one of those animals, that then it gives people, like you said, if you're going into a store with a dog, well, do you need that dog? Are you sure? Is this something that you need to bring into the store? And it just makes it hard, because then it's not just having to train the dog, having to train the handler. You now have to train the public because they maybe have been soured. They've been bit by a fake service dog, or they've had issues where they've run amok in a store.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the issue nowadays is that most of my clients' disabilities aren't visible, right? That makes it really hard. So you physically walk into a store with a dog, and people might look at that and be like, geez, what's wrong with that person? Oftentimes my clients have been asked, what do you need that dog for? And I'm like, can you imagine asking somebody that? Like, if you're walking out of a store with a prescription in a bag, can you imagine somebody saying, what's in the bag? What do you need that for?
That happened over the last 4 years with COVID.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? Like, it's just ridiculous. So, educating the public is huge. And again, like I say, when you take somebody that's got severe anxiety or has panic attacks and just doesn't do well with crowds, things like that, when you take a dog into a store, you're going to draw attention. And man, they're so good. Like, people have been so good to advocate for other service dogs, and they know, like, they have defaults of things that they're going to say to people, and that's part of what we train, right? It's not all for the dog. Like, it's me to train them as a handler, and then how to navigate through public. Like, people are going to ask you these things. How are you going to deal with this situation? So that you can navigate it effectively and respond rather than reacting and then taking off out of there. So yeah, that's a lot of challenges.
And dogs are so incredibly intelligent. And I've seen a number of videos over the last couple of years where, I don't remember what types of dogs they were, but they have so many commands that their owner can say a word, and then the dog will run to another room and grab that stuffed, like it'll say monkey, and then run to the other room and grab that monkey toy. And is that something that you feel could be done with almost any breed, or is that a specific breed where you've got 100 different things that it can recall and it can know? And just because dogs are so smart and they can be trained for a certain thing, but is it something where in their vocabulary, if you will, is it normal that dogs can have 100 or more commands? It's just like, okay, I know what the monkey is, or the red square, or the, because I know animals like crows are pretty intelligent.
Oh yeah.
But for dogs to be able to be trained that way, I think it was a video where they had a room full of stuffed animals and they just say this stuffed animal, and then the dog would jump into that room and wouldn't come back until they found it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not, I can't say that it's breed specific. I can say that there's definitely some breeds that are more trainable, but even still, like if you look at labs as a whole, like some of them are really adept at retrieving birds. Some of them are more show line dogs that haven't had anything in their family tree for 20 generations that's picked up a bird, same dog, but one's definitely going to be better than the other. And again, it doesn't have to be a purebred dog. I've trained a bunch of service dogs that were Heinz 57s, mixed breeds, It really comes down to the dog as an individual and the handler's abilities. So if you took somebody that's a good handler, we'll say a pro, and you took a dog that we'll just say is a mixed breed, could be a rescue, might be the smartest dog you've ever had. Yeah. And I've definitely seen things like that with, not just my board and train program in the summer where you take 6 to 8 dogs and you're working with them and you go, man, like this dog cannot miss, so consistent every day. And I've definitely had dogs like that through my career. Like they're all good, but there's some that are just like, I'm not going to forget that guy. He was good, or she was really good, So yeah, and again, people will ask male or female. Apples to oranges at times. Really, it just depends on whether you're going to breed or not. There's a few general differences there, but as far as their capabilities, sometimes males are a little bigger and more powerful. Memphis is almost the same size as Tank. So, yeah. But yeah, when it comes down to that, it's sort of more about the specific dog itself. Doesn't really matter to me the breed or what. I've seen some really intelligent mixed breeds. So
what is it that keeps you training? I mean, I'm looking at a wall full of ribbons, and you've been doing this a long time.
yeah.
So what keeps you year after year doing it again, doing it for other people? It must be difficult to go through. I know you recently put down Otter, a dog that you had for some time. Why do you keep going? Why do you keep training?
Oh, especially with I come back to the working dogs again. I'm like, you look at a dog like Otter, and she was 12 years old, such a long decorated career. There were so many people that knew that dog. It wasn't like just my group of friends that hunted with her that knew her. I mean, we traveled clear across Canada, down in the States. We did tons of shows, seminars, demonstrations. When I pro staff for Cabela's, she was right there with me, right? Like she was part of the gig. It was me and her, So you think about the amount of people's lives that dog impacted. Like I literally had hundreds of messages from people, like with stories about, I don't even own a dog, but I was at a hunt test and I remember seeing her and coming back to another one to watch her, kind of thing. And I'm like, there's so many good memories, and it's such a huge part of waterfowl hunting for me that I just could not imagine my life without them. I can sit there all day without a gun to run my dog, you know what I mean, to watch them do that. And that's always been just a huge part of my life. I just don't remember a time when I didn't want to be doing that with them. And for other people, when you're teaching somebody's pet dog just obedience and stuff, it's a huge impact on their life, you know what I mean? Like, you're part of that dog's life, making it better so that they can enjoy their dog that much more, right? People don't forget that. Like, people have so much gratitude for that, right? And you know, for me especially, and again, like with the service dogs and things, like, it changes people's lives, man, you know. So there's a lot more to it than just teaching them, taking a treat and teaching them to sit. Like, for me, it's I don't know, it's just an absolute way of life. Yeah, I just absolutely love it. It's, when I was a pipe fitter and a plumber, you know, it was a good job, but my heart wasn't in it. Like, this stuff lights my heart on fire, you know. This is what I was meant to do, no question, 100%. That's got to be pretty close.